All right, you're watching Start to Sold, and today we're going to interview Pete Grego from NorCal Beverage, and we're going to talk about how to take your idea and turn it into a liquid refreshment beverage. If you ever wondered, oh my gosh, how would I take my idea for a drink and turn it into something that can be sold in a store? Pete is the guy you want to talk to. He is the VP of Sales for a co-packer who runs all kinds of international brands, brands that you know all about. And so if you've ever bought a canned beverage or a beverage in a jar, glass jar, or a plastic bottle, he's probably seen it and worked with that company. So we want to ask him some cool questions to figure out, how do you take your idea and get it selling on the shelf? So Pete, thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Emily, for having me, and I look forward to helping you out with any information you need to help develop and market a beverage.
So what's exciting about Pete is that actually we have launched a product very recently. We thought the best way to illustrate and explain how to launch an idea into a physical product that you can sell is to explain our story. One of the companies that I've worked with is Jocko White Tea, and a friend of mine and also a podcaster and New York Times bestselling author is Jocko Willink from Jocko Podcast, and he drinks this tea before he rolls jujitsu every day. And so we decided to turn it into a dry, shelf-stable tea that it's sold really well. And what we heard a lot of people saying is, oh my gosh, I wish I could drink that tea on a regular basis. Just reach in the fridge and grab it and go. So we wanted to do that. And we had our recipe of what the tea should taste like. And we want to know how to get it into something like this. I'm actually going to drink some of it for you right now. We made this with NorCal Beverage. And thanks to their help, we were able to get this done really quickly. So, Pete, we go through this normal process at the company that I own where we take an idea and we get it from start to finish. And the first phase of developing a product is ideation, where you come up with your idea, you figure out, like, what do you want the recipe to be? What do you want it to taste like? And so when it comes to someone who wants to work with a huge company like you, what is the best first step for someone who wants to start formulating an idea for a recipe?
Well, we have quite various types of products that have come to us for development, and we have a process to make sure that we try to minimize any disruptions during the process to the potential brand owner by guiding them through a process that allows them to know what we need to get started taking the product into commercialization. And some of those steps include making sure that you have the formulation validated as being able to be ran in a commercial environment in large quantity for production in a high-speed environment. And we do that by assuring that the brand owner has aligned with a batch instruction sheet to us on how they want the product batched, and then also making sure that the brand owner has reliable sources for the ingredients. That is really key, making sure that the supply chain are sound and meet the highest quality goals. Those are all really pillars of making a good beverage. At that point, once we know that that's been secured, we move towards evaluation and align our process capabilities with the brand owner. And at that point, then we will start to align about packaging. In this case, your product had cans, and that's something we do. We want to make sure that you had all of the right labeling and decorating of the can done, and artwork was submitted to the can manufacturer, as well as your secondary packaging was in a fully wrapped fiber box, and we wanted to make sure that those containers were aligned with our equipment and also met your standards for color and finish. Once we had all that, we went through a process to make sure that the product made and was filed for all state and regulatory compliance. Because we are making a tea and it's an acidified food, the state of California, in this case where we operate, has a pH control program that they oversee. And so all products that have a tea base or have any type of an acidified nature to it requires submission, and we do that in conjunction with the brand owner. And at that point, your product is falls below a 4.3 pH level, then you are able to produce without being under regulatory control. If the pH level is higher, then you could be subject to regulatory control as before it's released to trade.
So one of the things I wanted to come back to was packaging. You just talked about how important that is when you're going through the ideation process. And what's so weird about packaging is that it kind of defines the brand. There's two pieces to a product. It's what it tastes like and what it looks like. So we, in this case, had a dry tea that when we brewed it, we put it on ice, we knew what it tasted like. We had a formulator help us make a really delicious recipe. So we knew what it would look like. And if we had all these different products, how do you decide, hey, this should go in a plastic bottle? Hey, this should go into a glass bottle. That would be the best way to sell it. Or how do you decide if it should be a can? Like, what are the pros and the cons of these different packaging mediums, and why was a can the best option for this?
Well, I think a can for this type of product, I think there's a few principles that have to be adopted when you're developing a brand. You have to look at what you're putting in the product, what is the base of the product, and then what is your marketing message? Where are your target audience? So in the case of Jocko, there's already a perception about what you're doing with the brand. Obviously, Jocko is a brand that is being built for people to have an allegiance to a following of a motivator that can have strength and perceives strength. So being in a can with a black decoration and a bold message is the right container. It's going to be consumed most likely in one serving. So their resealability is not as much of a concern. Beverage, for example, that has a need to not be consumed in one sitting, that's where resealability comes in, and that's where having a closure that can be resealed is very important. Labeling with bottles now also becomes another opportunity, because now you have various different types of choices for decorating the bottle. For the can, you have one, decoration. And so this is where, if you got certain ingredients, more for products that you may not think about as being able to be drunk in one setting or occasion, a bottle is much more applicable to packaging. And then finally, glass. Glass can have some really good properties if you have anything to make it sensitive, real sensitive to taste, finish taste, where you have maybe a live ingredient. That's why you see a lot of things like kombucha putting glass. There's a reason for that, because it's a sensitive to live culture. So glass preserves those types of things.
That's so interesting. And what you mentioned also about labeling, I think is so interesting, because when you're an emerging brand, you have to worry about how much money you've got to spend to buy certain packaging. And a lot of people don't realize that when you manufacture cans, for example, on one production run, you make enough to fill an entire truck of this particular, print. So it's a huge commitment. You have to be ready to run a huge amount of product with a bottle, with a thermoform bottle that exists, and especially ones that have maybe custom imprinting on the sides. There's also a huge mold you've got to buy, or you need to buy something that's already existing, an existing mold. So there's still huge minimums. And glass probably has the least amount of minimums, in the sense that usually you buy a stock bottle and they usually keep it in stock. So if you were an emerging brand, you'd say that packaging probably affects a lot of your costs, and you have to think about the minimum runs. So in terms of ideation, that kind of brings me to the next question, because I think a lot of people, when they're beginning to do a refreshing beverage, they have no idea how much it will take and what kind of minimums that they need to expect to run, and why. Why are there minimums? Because when you're making something like cheese or something that's handmade, you usually can have small runs, like 1,000 units, 3,000 units. I think we did 4 truckloads worth of product with you guys, because that was what we needed to do with our minimum. So talk to us, what should someone who's launching a brand or refreshment, what kind of minimums should a person be prepared for when they're about to launch a beverage out into the market?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Emily. And one of the things that we always look at is, obviously when you're starting out, you want to control your costs. That's fully understood. However, you have to realize that if you go from in a bench top environment, or so to speak, yourself, and now you want to get into a commercial retail environment, you're going to be scaling the product in size naturally, because in order to run in a commercial environment like NorCal Beverage Company, we have a certain infrastructure of tanks and process equipment that needs a certain amount of flow. And in order to sustain that, we have, in our case, a minimum number of gallons that we make of a batch of any product as a minimum batch. And in this case, we have a benchmark of 20,000 gallons of finished liquid product. Now, with that being said, that sounds like a tremendous amount, but the reality is, depending upon what container size in ounces that you produce in, and how many containers per finished case you put in, it can vary. But we also include in that amount is your waste, or what they call the term as washout. Because when you're done processing and filling, you have a charged filler pipe to the filler from the batch tank, and that is basically what's left in the process that has to be flushed and sanitized. Much like you would if you made a cake at home and you made it in a bowl, and what's left stuck to the bowl is waste. So that has to be part of the calculation. We also, by doing that, can have a greater success of making a consistent product. And so that's why we have minimum requirements. Of course, this is very expensive. It has a cost of operations that's pretty high. So all those reasons factor into the minimum batch requirement.
Right. And so we have so much experience manufacturing products and developing products at the company that I own. But I'll say that this type of process requires so much more than a lot of other types of manufacturing, because when you flip the switch, you are doing can after can after can, and it's a fast process so that there's efficiencies, so that those cans can be affordable for the customer. So it made so much sense why you would have such huge minimums. And I just think if a person's considering launching an emerging brand, a refreshment beverage, they need to realize that it's going to take some serious capital up front and a real commitment to the product that you're going to be making. So just something I think that a person should think through.
Yeah, I think this is a very important point that a lot of people don't fully understand when they have a desire to get into everything in a commercial sense. they believe that that it's you're able to do it in a very small scale. You can do that in a more cheap fashion, but have success at launching this into retail, you'll never be able to meet product need by doing it in a real small boutique environment. Your costs will eventually eat you up. You have to get into a higher scale facility that can deliver you, as you mentioned, a more value added.
Right. So we just talked about packaging, which has a lot to do with the design elements of launching a brand. And right now we're talking about a lot of the manufacturing elements. One of my favorite photos that I have from when we were on site is when I was wearing some hairnet. You know, you had your hair back in a hairnet, and I think you had to wear a beard mustache net. And it was, a lot of people are not aware at what great lengths you guys go to keep food safe. Because you can imagine if someone was careless, a manufacturer was careless and you're manufacturing 4 truckloads worth of product and something was wrong, it would hurt so many people. And so you guys were uptight. You were super, super uptight, but I was really grateful that you were so by the book, following all the different rules. And so speak a little bit about QA and how important that is, and what kind of processes an emerging brand needs to be prepared for so they could have their T's crossed and their I's dotted.
Yeah, quality is everything in our business. We don't. We have to sustain the highest level of quality at all times, and that's done by having a very strong commitment from leadership all the way down to the people on the floor. And I think you saw that demonstrated very uniquely in our facility. Everybody cares about quality, and we make it absolutely paramount before we do anything. We take quality into everything we do. And those standards are standards that we are audited against by several accredited audited firms. And also included in that is we hire a third-party company to come in and audit our own internal quality system. So, we feel very strongly that in order to make a good beverage product, those standards have to be upheld and met every day.
I know you guys are incredible at it, because you could tell that every person that you spoke to on your team just felt a moral obligation. It wasn't just their job. They felt a moral obligation of commitment to quality. So I thought it was a lot of fun to wear a hairnet, and I was glad you guys were so serious about it, because it keeps me safe and it keeps my clients safe.
I'll give you an example. We are so committed that even on our employee badges, we have the quality statement attached with all of our principles of our quality system. That's how committed we are as a company.
That's awesome. You could feel it. You could feel it when you're walking down the hallways. So another thing I wanted to talk to you about was the delivery, because that's the next step in the process. Once you've gone through, manufactured all of that product, you guys have a really efficient way of palletizing everything and getting it together. And in our case, we decided to sell things as a pack of 10. So we have our cans that are in a 10 pack. Let's see if you can grab it right here without it all falling over. So this is the pack of 10. I had to open it to be able to get some of these cans. But so this is the method that we chose to sell our product in. And then we had to pack it in a tray. And so there's 2 of these in a tray, and then we have a big pallet. So, and then I know that you can also have the option of buying just straight pallets, having no outer box, just putting units in a tray. Talk to me about the packaging and when you should decide what method to pack it in, depending upon the delivery method or the retail chain that you're going to be selling to.
Yeah, so this is generally decided when the brand is developed based on how the product is going to go into the marketplace. So one of the things, right now when we look at a new product starting out, a lot of times the product's being sold in a single serve environment. So a lot of the products we make initially will be packed loose in a tray like you demonstrated. And at that point, there'll be a decision made to either put clear film over the top of the case, or in some cases, if the brand feels that the image of the case is important, we'll either see a decorated tray, or we can do a registered print film over the case to add graphic visibility. So as far as the multi-pack that you just demonstrated, that's usually comes when a customer has penetrated the market and believes that there's going to be multiple purchases by one consumer. And in this case, it lends itself well to that. Also, in the e-commerce space, this is a great opportunity for having a multi-carton product available through the fulfillment of Amazon or Walmart or any other e-commerce retail.
Right. And that's why we chose the 10-pack, because we knew that we'd be shipping things through Amazon.com and that we would eventually be selling in retail. And we figured the fastest way to market for all these things was to put it in a outer exterior box, because Amazon would be scanning barcode, and that's the way that you got to keep everything tight. And so a larger case pack would not be the right fit for us. So that's really, it's important. And after, you figured out how to deliver your product, say that again. So after you've figured out how to deliver your product and how you're going to pack everything up, there's the most important piece, which is sales. If you develop a great product and you don't sell it, you're just out money. And that's actually what I usually tell clients they need to think of first. Hey, how are you going to sell this product? What's the distribution channel that you're going to use? What's the pricing that you're going to use? How are you going to market things? So we happen to have people who had already tried the tea, and we have a podcast. And so that helps us to get a hold of people. But other emerging brands don't have that network yet. So what have you seen really, really works for a new startup brand when it comes to sales? What needs to be a good strategy for success that you've seen in the beverage industry?
Well, one thing that's always been important in selling beverages in the marketplace is you really have to have a story that ties to your brand. And obviously, this is about building a message that you're going to be very clear in how you communicate it to the end user. And that is really a pinnacle of sales. So, for example, if you have a brand where you have an identity with a spokesperson, or in this case, Jocko really has a message and a story to tell, that's already built in. But some brands may do it with either proprietary ingredient, that they have an impassioned story or a sustainability message. Some brands do it with maybe cause marketing, right? So they may give proceeds back to certain things, certain, whether it be certain, charitable foundations or even brand. You need a story to tell so that you have a message to go market. That's a real critical piece of sales. And then obviously the most obvious is getting it demoed and exposed to the potential end users, and then creating availability with distribution opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in terms of sales, how much do you think branding, what do you think is the most important thing for a product to really sell? Is it the exterior packaging appearance? Do you think it's the flavor profile? Do you think it's your sales team who can hustle?
Well, the general answer in my perspective is it's all of that. But One thing that you have to have is, along with the message of what your product is you have to be able to have a package that differentiates itself and isn't perceived as a Me Too product. And the way you do that is by having distinction in your packaging. So in the case of Jocko, you've chosen black as the base. So you've already created a distinction out there because there's not a lot of other beverage products out there with a black base. So those are the kind of things that you need to think about when you're developing your packaging strategy. And the other thing is, looking at what your brand is and what space are you going to go in terms of a category. So if you're selling an energy drink, you're going to have a targeted audience in certain markets. But if you're selling something like a tea that has a broad appeal and has an opportunity to be consumed by more of the masses, then you obviously have now a bigger window of opportunity to affect a bigger population of consumers. So those are all things, evaluations that have to be done at the time of brand development.
Yeah, I love it. I appreciate all of this input because you have so many years of experience in launching brands, and you daily watch new products go through the line as well as oversee existing brands, making sure that they are successfully being repeated. The flavor tastes the same every single time someone opens that can of that beverage. And so I really, really appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you would share with an emerging brand that they would need to hear, to know, or to think about before launching something like this?
Yeah, make sure that that you have a commitment, making sure that you follow the processes that we discussed, and that you're committed to be able to move and adapt to changing marketplace when you enter your brand into the market, because things do change and you have to be adaptable to those changes.
That's good. Yeah, being adaptable I think it's thankfully a skill set that emerging brands or entrepreneurs usually have, is that they are usually pretty flexible and good at growing compared to maybe a really established company. But there are a lot of companies that are out there that want to add private label lines or different flavor profiles into their existing internal brand. And so I think that that's good advice, to be flexible and also to realize what kind of a commitment you've got to make. If you're going to go into the beverage industry, you really have to be ready for the minimums. You need to be ready for the hustle to be able to get into those larger grocery stores, making sure that you're on those shelves and that you really have a presence, because it takes a lot to get this very, very big animal moving in the right direction so that it's actually profitable and that people can actually get to taste and enjoy what you've just made. Put all that love and labor into to create something really delicious. So, well, we've loved working with you, and I just appreciate so much your help as a co-packer and partner with us in launching this brand. And thank you for sharing some advice for emerging brands so that they can kick off their beverage and get it into stores. I really appreciate your time, Pete. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions or need to get a hold of NorCal Beverage or Pearl Resourcing, which is my company, about how to take your idea and get it launched, the information to contact us will be in the show notes. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to the channel and share with anyone else you know in the industry who wants to launch a new product, either private label for an existing company or wants to be an emerging brand entrepreneur and start something fresh. We hope we helped you, and I hope you have a great day.